Welcome to Expand. As I reflect back on the history of Cobb Vineyard Church, I'm amazed at what God has done and continues to do. From our beginning more than 20 years ago, where we were a group of 8 to 10 people sitting together in my living room, dreaming of a church that would make a serious difference in people's lives. We yearned to see people encounter God in a life-altering way that led to a lifelong pursuit. Within 10 months, we had launched out under the banner of Metro Atlanta Covenant Life Church, and we needed a place to meet. And we found one in Marietta at a place called the Shriner School. It was really one room with paper-thin pole dividers to break into smaller rooms. That would have been fine, except the adults were outnumbered by the kids, and the oldest at that time was 6. But God met us there, and He brought people who needed Him and allowed us to love them into His kingdom. And there, a group of pioneers planted seed for a vineyard that God has watered through the years. And then we were looking for another facility. We'd heard of churches meeting in Seventh-day Adventist buildings because they meet on Saturdays and are usually available on Sundays. So we contacted Marietta Seventh-day Church and began using their facility on Sundays. It was during this time when this fledgling group was discovering who God had called us to be, and richness and hope were added to the seed that had been planted. All along, we felt God wanted to connect us with the greater church at large. It was during the Seventh-day season that we met this movement of churches called the Vineyard. We found a movement of churches that were passionate to abandon their lives to Jesus. We found a movement that expressed their love for Him in passionate worship. We found a movement that wanted to see the supernatural work of God demonstrated through normal, natural people. They, like us, wanted to change the world not by having Christians change where they attend church, but by seeing those who were not connected to God find their way home to Him. And on Sunday evening, August 1st, 1993, Cobb Vineyard Church came into existence. And then it was time to move again. The Seventh Day was looking to renovate and needed us to find a new home. And with that, we moved into what has always been affectionately called the Blue Building. We were a little concerned because it would cost us about $1,000 more per month. One of our leaders spoke up at that point and said, "Are we planning to grow or not? To not step out in faith in this situation is saying we do not expect God to bless us and allow us to grow." It was during this period where we experienced the Toronto blessing, and we saw some amazing things happen and some very interesting things as well. It was also during this time that we began to gain more traction and saw our sphere of influence widen. We saw people come from many different backgrounds and spiritual experiences, and we witnessed God put together a powerful church that, even though still relatively small in number, was making an impact on our community. For example, it was during this time that a member of our church named Beth Day had a vision to serve those in need by distributing food. She rallied others to help and started a ministry that continues to this day, our Beth Day Memorial Food Pantry. Then it was time to move again. This time it was into a school setting where we hoped we would have a position of influence on neutral ground while being able to save money and look for a permanent facility. Little did we know that that move would last 3 years and be some of the most challenging times in the life of the church. So the move was made to Kennesaw Elementary School. This season in the life of the church saw some very significant changes. Some people who had been leading various ministries stepped aside, and we began to see new leadership emerge. But through it all, God was faithful to hold us together and even allow us to grow. In early 1999, a friend came to us and said, "I found a piece of land that's right down the street from the school." Another church had a contract on it and wasn't able to come up with the finances, so they prayed, they dedicated it to the Lord, and they asked Him to use that land for His glory. This building sits on that property. Since moving into this building, we've seen God do some pretty amazing things. We're coming up on the 10-year celebration of the start of Celebrate Recovery, where literally hundreds of people have been impacted by the delivering power of Jesus. Over just the last 5 years, we've seen over 300 people baptized, many for their first expression of faith in a public setting. We've distributed about 250 tons of food to those in need. Our youth group has seen bodies healed and the manifest glory of God fill a room with a mist. Our college group has laid hands on people and seen bones move before their eyes and bring healing. We've seen the expansion of our staff to include Joel and Trace Balin, who merged into Cobb Vineyard along with some great folks from Crossbridge Church in 2010. We added Brent and Kristen Butts full-time in 2013 to lead our student ministry and been so blessed by them. We've sent out about a dozen people to serve as missionaries in various parts of the world and continue to send teams each summer to places in need. And we celebrate all that God has done in us and through us. What an amazing journey.